Hey, this is Chuck, and you are listening to Fans with Bands, the podcast where we talk to the fans and the bands they dig about life, music, and whatever the hell else we want to talk about. Today on Fans with Bands, we're talking to JC and the Disciples. Check it out. Hey, this is Chuck with Fans with Bands, and I am talking to JC from JC and the Disciples. JC, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Chuck. Thanks so much for having me today.
Hey,
This
thank
is fun.
you so much. You sent me the tune. I think it's the newest tune you have out called Deception, and
Yeah,
yeah, I was checking it out, and I was like, I love the, kind of. To me, I thought of like Tom Petty. I thought of the Black Crowes. I thought of Bob Seger, and I thought, wow, this is really cool. And I thought I gotta talk to you, and get the story. So, thanks again for being on the show.
it's truly my pleasure and my honor. Anytime anybody gets into what we're doing, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled. And to make the comparisons between the artists you just named, I'm honored. Thank you. That's
Yeah.
very kind.
Yeah. So, I always like to kind of go back and, get the origin story for the band. So how did JC and the Disciples come to be?
The Disciples kind of came out of a recording project. So I'm a singer-songwriter and have been since a long time, a very long time. Um, and Well, in a nutshell, just like, all transparency, I had had a crazy tragedy trauma in my family. Um, and Being the singer and songwriter guy that I am, and always drifted towards that as my solace, started writing about that particular situation, not directly, that's a
Yeah.
whole conversation about writing, but started working on all these pieces, and uh, I'm trying to think of the yeah, okay. So the next thing that happened was during that process of writing, which was this was 2014 when the crazy went down. Around 2015, 16, I was just, it was just flowing out because
Yeah.
and I'll tap on this for a second about writing is I'm not in control of when the melody or the song hits me,
Okay.
and I'm sure a lot of people that's being songwriters or creatives, or they tend to get hit with a moment of uh, the
Yeah.
divine touch of, like, you get in the moment, and you got to write it down, right? So I'm just stuff's just kind of pouring out of me at that particular point in time, and I thought, because I record everything that I write,
Uh,
in some sense or another.
right.
I'm an audio engineer by another trade, so it's a complete natural process.
Right.
Oh well, so I'm doing these demos, and I'm hanging out with good mates of mine who are music peers, Jimmy Sparks and Jim McGarrian, who were the bass player and drummer, friends that I'd been working with prior to the crazy,
Right.
doing little projects here and there. Sorry, long story longer.
No, it's good. It's
My
good.
mother always said, don't ask Campbell the time of day, because he'll tell you how to build a watch. So we through some really cool uh, uh, stroke of luck.
Yeah.
I ended up, I visited J.L. Hudson's daughter's house, which was right on the water on in Grosse Pointe.
Yeah.
And I'll try to make this quicker. the the gentleman who showed me the house was in charge of this estate,
Okay.
where this original house had come, and then it had become Mr. Ed Froelich, who was pretty much a real estate developer through the 50s and 60s and 70s.
Okay.
And well, blah, 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 long story longer. Went through the DIA, and then it came back to the estate because the DIA couldn't afford it anymore. And he said, "Hey, you want to come check out this house?" And I was like, "Absolutely, let's go check out this house." And it's
Yeah.
this fabulous, like, mansion, like from the real time, right?
Wow. Wow.
And I'm walking through the house, and I'm really, audio tuned, right? I'm walking through the house, and I can't believe the house is empty, but I can't believe how good the rooms sound.
So,
Like, so I'm like, wow. There's all this natural reverb and delay going on, and he's like, what the hell?
yeah. What is this
And
guy doing?
I love old architecture and cool stuff like that. So I managed to get to, so that's why he even thought of me initially. So
Uh-huh.
he's, what are you doing? And I'm like, God, it sounds amazing. Like every room in here
Yeah.
sounds like it's like tuned, you know? And he's like, because you would hit a note and it would just sing and hold that note, like without any kind of, the reflections were all true.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it was probably just luck that worked out in the way that they designed the original house, but whatever, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, God, I'd love to record here. He's like, what do you mean you want to record it? I said, I'd love to record. And he goes, well, how long would it take you? And I said, I don't know, a couple days. Like, you're
Yeah.
crazy. Right? Like, no way would you let me do that.
Yeah.
And he did. He's like,
Really?
go ahead. He goes, the house is going to go up for sale. We got to clean up the stuff. And as long as you're not like, swinging out the
Tearing it apart,
windows,
right?
yeah, you absolutely give it a try.
Yeah.
So I rolled all my recording gear into the house, called up Jimmy, who was a bass player and bass player and drummer, and said, look, this is going to sound nuts, but we want to come over and we're going to
Yeah.
record in this space. And they're like, sure, why not? So we did. And we ended up cutting over like the course of 3 days. I think, well, we cut the record. So there were
Wow.
12 songs, and they just kept coming. And I was like, and I kept saying, you want to do another one? And they were like, sure, how's this go? So,
Wow.
so we and just hung out in this house for a few days and recorded all these things. And the playbacks were sounding so cool. We were all jazzed by it. I was like,
Yeah.
maybe we should actually put this out, and they were in agreement. And, fast forward a year,
Uh-huh.
because it took, now the funny thing was after the 4 days, the gentleman who was so kind to let me use the space said, well, what do you do now? And I said, well, now I do overdubs and vocals, and I hadn't even written all the lyric for these pieces. They were just
Just the music.
they were the music. I had the arrangements were all there, but I didn't know what I was
Yeah.
actually saying, except in some sections, right? So he's like, well, where are you going to do that? And I said, well, I don't know, I'll figure it out. And he goes, well, there's nothing going on here, why don't you just stay and work here? Yes, please. I think after 7 months he was a little tired.
So now what happened to this place? Like,
So it actually, well, it finally went up
Okay.
for sale, and there was a buyer.
oh,
And that's when I got the call of like,
yeah.
time to go, man. And it was totally cool. I mean, I wasn't there like 24/7.
Yeah. Yeah.
In my life and all that stuff, but all my gear was in one spot. All the recording gear was there. All the amps were there. All the guitars were there. It was just a
Yeah.
matter of, oh, hey, I've got a few hours, and I'll go bop over to the house, which was at the time was literally 5 minutes away from where a flat that I was renting.
Uh-huh.
And went there and just would record 3-4 hours and put it down and walk away and come back a day or two later and do the whole process again. And I was really allowed the time to create. And once we actually finished it, I was like, yeah, we're putting this out. So that was the first Disciples record. It was called Hammered.
Hammered, yeah. Okay.
And a concept record. Obviously, it was all written during the being able to process and deal with the stuff that was going on emotionally as well as musically. I mean, it
Yeah.
was really fun to discover that the pathways of where the song was going to take you, and we were allowed that opportunity rather than like, and believe me, in my past it was like, okay, 3.5 minute song, 4 minute, it varies.
Yeah.
And just for timing and for studio costs and all that kind of stuff. So that was really lifted right off my shoulders, and I was really allowed to be a creative in the moment of creation, and I'll never be able to repay that debt in the sense of what they allowed me to do. So James Blanca, Ed Froelich, thank you for everything. in
That's awesome.
in being able to because and then it was on a healing note, like for
Yeah.
the that we'd gone through.
Yeah.
Uh, it was really a really healthy thing. And honestly, if I'd not been able to, I mean, I would have done it anyway, some other way.
Some way it would have gotten out
Yeah,
there.
because that's what I do, right?
Yeah.
That's what we do as musicians and players and writers, and we all just find our way.
Right.
But to be able to have it in such a way that I always wanted to try to make a record like that
Yeah.
was a real gift, and to a degree of a gratitude I can't even explain,
Yeah.
except for the fact that it saved my bacon, mate. It really it really did.
That's awesome. Because
So that was the actual beginning. Then we started playing, like, hey, we made a record, we're
yeah.
gonna play out, and we started doing some dates, and then boom, then this magic pandemic happened. So that was like, oh man, okay,
Yeah.
well, that's kind of putting a little bit of a
Let's put the
hitch.
kibosh on now.
Hitch,
That good,
yeah,
good
put
stuff.
a hitch in
Yeah.
my.
So, you're when you were talking about the, uh, I'd listened to Hammered, after
Thank you.
you'd sent me that and I love that album too. It's seems a little more, there's a little more of an edge to it. But now knowing this story is important because then I can go back and kind of listen to it because it sounds great. I mean,
Thank you.
it's recorded, the mix is great. How it sounds is really good. Not just the music itself, but the sound of it. And knowing that story I think it's important. Because then you can go back and go, oh wow, this is. You can almost envision. You can see you guys. In that this room in this big mansion and kind of visualize that whole process. So
Right, and I'm a big fan of that era of rock and roll.
yeah,
Clearly, because
yeah,
everything I do is I'm influenced by that kind of stuff, right?
yeah,
So, and I always saw them, recording in organic places.
yeah,
And being an audio guy, I'm always attuned to that. I walk into a room, I know, like, I can feel the sound pressure level. It's just one of those things.
yeah.
I'm an idiot in most things, but I'm a savant when it comes to stuff like that, or so I'm told. So I always wanted to make a record with a real natural environment, with real natural sounds, and not just as we do.
Yeah.
You've made recordings, you've made
Yep.
records. I'm talking about. You go into a studio and the studio may sound good, but it tends to all be a science experiment at some times because you're adding all of these artificial elements to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Though they sound beautiful and they're great,
Yeah.
still, to me, being like some joker purist, I'm like, and we're all trying to recreate these kind of sounds. Why do we have to do it in a box? Why can't we capture it for
Yeah.
real? So, I did the drum kit with like 3 mics, right? On Hammered. It was just in the whole Glyn Johns thing,
Yeah.
right? 2 overheads and a kick drum. And actually, that's a lie. I used a 4th mic on the snare drum, but I didn't use too much of that. That was just kind of to make
Sure it pops.
a little bit more snap out of the sound of the snare, which Jimmy's drums sound amazing. So I wanted to capture like that sound again, going back to the like records like Deep Purple or Zeppelin, right? They recorded in houses that sounded really cool.
Yeah.
and I was like, that always turned me on.
Yeah.
So don't get me wrong, I love the studio environment, but I like to be able to create my own organic tone.
Yeah.
And just because it sounds different, right? It sounds like that room.
Right.
And I'm really into that, kind of making it sound like that. Now you can do that with a box now, and I understand that. But there's something just about the tonality of it being captured, not what's the word I'm looking for? To be captured organically, and
Yeah.
I've said before. So when I was doing guitar overdubs, like I did them all in this big long chamber basement, which was all concrete by 50 feet long, and I
Right.
ran microphones all the way down this hallway
Oh,
and
wow.
recorded every channel of that, and then during the mix process was able to pull up all that tone, and when we were mixing, Ryan Hyland and I mixed the record. um we didn't need we barely needed anything outside of like just some overall compression on the record, and we
Yeah.
would just put up faders, and all of a sudden the guitar went from like sounding like this to
Yeah.
like this to like this. Oh, you know what I mean? But it was all
Right.
there. Same with drums, and uh the vocals were all pretty tight in a small little room in the basement, but blah blah blah. I will go down that rabbit hole. Microphones and
Yeah.
preamps, fun
That's
stuff.
awesome.
So,
So
yeah.
yeah, so the new song Deception is on
Yes.
is that album out the
No. Yeah.
Woolly Mammoth and Other Assorted Sweets. But I also want to know about this title, but like so let's go there first. So how did you come up with that title?
Well, the title came. Actually, I was. I. Okay, for another long story here.
All right.
Um, my oldest friend in the world and I, who I've known since I was 15.
Nice.
We're really tight, really close.
Yeah.
And throughout this period of COVID and all the craziness and whatever, I started to identify as a woolly mammoth because I'm old and I'm furry and I'm almost extinct. And it was kind of a gag, right? It was a joke. So when we started recording this next round of songs, because after we finished Hammered, and we tried to support it as well as we could in the realm that it was, but really it was a recording project to see what the next thing is, and it's just really about the creative process and wanting to work with other people that might be like-minded and want to join in on that. And they did that on Hammered too. Like I had Johnny Evans played on it, Jimmy Drosbar. I mean, so many people came in and did a thing. Barbara Payton, she came in and sang, and blah blah blah. Just really wanted to. The Disciples is really about, to kind of backtrack a little bit. The Disciples is really about collective,
right?
Though it's a play on my name, obviously, but it's about just getting together with like-minded people and creating something in the moment, right? That's really kind of the overview of what the band's about. Like when we play live, it's like, here's a structure of song, but if it goes left, we'll follow. Let's go. Let's just explore that world, because in this day and age, besides jam bands, that doesn't exist. You know what I mean? Like people it's got to be the 3.5-minute song. It's like back to the 50s kind of hit single thing.
Yeah, where you stick to that formula. You always do that, and you always play it that way.
We have to do it like this, and it's like, and that's fun. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
There's a couple of shorties on Woolly, but not a lot. The majority are longer pieces, like 6 and 8 minutes long. Right. I mean, but they were the moment. It was in the moment while the band is doing its thing, and it was a real creative thing. But so when we started talking about doing this next record, it was, well, let's continue to explore this, but maybe push it a little further. And the genius of digital technology is we can always edit. So let's just not worry about the recording and just explore the space, kind of like a Spinal Tap moment, right? With what was it? What do they call that? The Odyssey? When they open up for the puppets. It's kind of one of those Spinal Tap moments. But, so they're like, all right. And it was one of those things where I had a lot of material that had sat on the shelves, and I was like, look, I'd really like to explore this because there's new material that I'd written, but then there was probably half a dozen other songs that never got their light of day, and I thought they were good pieces. So
Uh-huh.
kind of laid them on them. Jimmy, again, we started with Jimmy and Jimmy,
Okay.
and uh, just went into we actually tracked this one at Willis Sound. We started our basic tracks at Willis Sound out in just I think south of Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
Beautiful church, beautiful sounding room, great place where I love the sound of drums and sounded like a room, right?
Yeah.
So same old thing. With like all the records that we'd been influenced by at that time. So it was, but a little more controlled, and it wasn't me engineering, right? So I didn't have to worry about mic placement and all that stuff. I just wanted to be the songwriter slash guitar player in this group and just see where that
Yeah.
without having to worry about wearing that hat. Though I like hats. I don't like wearing six of them at the same time. I'd
Right.
rather like one or two at
Yeah,
the moment.
exactly. Yeah.
So we go in and I think we tracked like about 16 songs
Wow.
over the course of 3 days. And that's just, full tilt boogie. It was
Yeah.
just, um, I wanted to like get drunk and high and hang out.
Yeah. No, let's do it. Let's get it done. I mean, that's
It feels great. Let's just keep going and see what happens. So, and actually out of the 16, I think 8 of them were keepers. The rest are not so much.
yeah.
Still good, but not anything that I'd want to make somebody have to listen to. So listen to this.
Yeah.
No, please don't make
Right.
me be nice and say, "Oh yeah, it's great," when it just isn't. And then I took the project back to Plymouth Rock, which is recordings, which is where I mixed Hammered with Ryan
Okay.
Highland, and we brought those in there as the material started to develop. The whole concept of what that record was, it started to come to fruition in my mind of what we were actually doing, because I don't know what we're doing until we get there, and it's the journey. And
Yeah.
you can say that about your music. You can say that mostly you can say it about your life,
Right.
and I think that's really where this kind of, I was free of all the drama that I'd experienced. Now it was time to, be an artist again and
Yeah.
not be hung up about, stuff that was in my mind. Just other stuff that was on my mind.
Right.
As
So
we do.
did it feel more freeing then for you?
It
These
started out
songs?
definitely started out that way. And then to be able to revisit some of the older material with a wiser brain or a wiser mind,
Yeah.
but still keeping actually the wisdom to say, be free.
Yeah.
Because when we're younger, we tend to have to keep it all in a box, right?
Right.
And as we get older, we start to realize that's not where it's at. Where it's at is discovering the freedoms.
Yeah.
And being able to, that's where the magic lies. Again, my going back to my good pal who has given me so much in the sense of she's a fine artist herself, and has changed my perspective many times throughout the course of my life. And it's always been better for it and more mind expanding in the sense of taking something from a different perspective.
Yeah, that's huge.
Always looking at something from a different perspective and being tolerant and open-minded enough to accept things that are uncomfortable for you or different. It's such a life lesson in that sense that I definitely came from something more in a box, and now the way my head works is I'm cool with just about everything, barring it, causing damage to somebody else.
Right.
But, if it's cool and it feels right and it's good, then it's cool. If you don't understand it, that's okay. It's right. No better, worse, no anything. It's just another part of the journey.
Yeah. Not everyone is ever gonna like totally be in sync with you, you know, and that's okay. You know, it's totally fine, and it's part, you know, their perception, their experience with whatever you're creating could be totally different from what you intended, you know. But that's part of it, right?
Well,
Is this,
that's the fabulous part. That's the
yeah,
part I love the most. Is speaking of a different perspective, is when some, like going back to what you said, you wanted to know a little more insight on Hammered. Was I'm so glad you didn't know the backstory prior to hearing the record, because the record on its own is will take you on whatever journey that journey is.
yeah,
And if I explain it to you prior to you hearing that, then it's going to color everything that
yeah.
you're you're going to think or have your own experience with, right? It's like video killed the radio star, right? So you know, through the 80s, and people making these films about their music, and when you hear that song, the first thing
Yeah,
most people think of is,
the visual.
oh, hey, I remember he's playing that, like, that
Yeah,
broadcaster, that Telecaster, and that.
yeah. That's always a tough thing for me because sometimes there's music where it's so I don't know. It's vague. Like where the writer was coming from is it's so open that I can't really figure out. uh, I'm curious about where they were coming from, right? And then there's other times where you don't. It's better if you don't know because you're just like take it as you like it, and you make the experience your own. But every once in a while, I come into some music where I'm like, oh, I really wish that I knew what they were, you know, what were they feeling or what were they thinking about? What was the inspiration, you know, for this?
Absolutely. I love that part of it too. The thing that I love the most, though, is letting the listener have their own experience with it before you cloud it with yours, because now
Yeah,
your initial impression is already cemented in your mind.
yeah,
Now that you hear somebody else's version of it, it's just kind of interesting and fun, but
yeah,
it's never going to take away that first moment that you had, right?
yeah, yeah.
And that's why I'm always like, um, I didn't used to be. I wanted to tell everyone, oh, this is what my song's about. Whoa.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, God, man, I don't care. I
I
don't
think
care
that,
what my song's about. I want you to have the experience. And that's it's like looking at a painting, you know.
yeah.
It's the same thing. I really understand that now. It took me, what, 50 something years to figure it out, but I'm there now,
Well, you did
man.
that. Yeah, you did it. So, what was your inspiration to? I mean, I know you're into, uh, you were or still are an audio engineer.
Yep.
But how did you get into music and playing guitar in particular?
Playing guitar and music. I, from the age of 3 or 4, was really into records and the sound of records. Uh,
Nice.
my my dad, who was an artist. Both my parents were artists in their own way, but my dad actually was a more commercial artist.
Okay.
But originally, he's a painter. As a matter of fact, if you look right over this shoulder,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
that's his. And you can't see it real close, but
Right.
that's his first painting when he was 16, and
Oh wow.
it's a an oil painting of Elan Donnan Castle. Now, both my parents are from
Scotland.
Scotland. Yeah,
Ah,
and
I've been
immigrated.
there.
Have you? Where'd you
Yeah.
go?
Well, I went to Ilion Doan.
Oh,
And
you went there.
yeah.
Hang on a second, Dad.
Oh yeah, I've been there. Went to Edinburgh and did part of the West Highland Way and
So
oh yeah,
does that look familiar to
it
you?
does. It totally does. Yeah, it was awesome. There was a guy like on that bridge, a kid actually, with bagpipes playing, and
Did he ask you for, did he let you cross the bridge? Did
yeah,
you
he
have to
did.
hack off his arms and legs?
Yeah, it's merely a flesh wound. We went to that other because there's another cast. I think it's Doan, um,
Okay.
where Monty Python was filmed.
Right.
And I think Highlander or not Highlander, maybe Highlander was there too, but also Outlander, the series Outlander was shot there too.
That's
Um,
fabulous. Good for you, mate. Good.
yeah,
Now, do you have heritage with Scott?
I so tangentially, like my family is like uh, I'm Czech I'm German, and I'm also about a quarter English, Irish, Scot. And
Well,
so,
it's all Northern European, right?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
of
yeah,
course. Right.
yeah.
So we're all brothers, man.
Yeah. So I actually we went to me and my wife went to Scotland. I bought a kilt, because we have a Marshall tartan. So I got the tartan. I got it right there. They shipped it back to me. Uh, I got married in that kilt. But yeah,
Fabulous.
it was fantastic. We had a great time. We've been twice, and each time was great. Did some hiking in the Monroes, and yeah, I love it there.
Yeah, me too. And when you're back, and I don't know if obviously it might be the same for you, but when I go back there, it's like I feel grounded. Like I feel like I'm in the right time zone.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that just is. I don't know if that's a thing for you, but I,
Yeah, it was total feeling of
every
comfort and just I don't know, something about that landscape. I can't tell you what.
it's a little
Yeah,
witchy, isn't it?
yeah. It's
It is a
just
little.
being
It
in
is.
the being in the Highlands, especially around Ben Nevis, and then going up into like Inverness. And last time we kind of ignored the East Coast, but last time we went to the Orkneys. That was just magical. I mean, I think everyone should go there because it's
I,
just
I I can't
so much
wait.
history.
I haven't made it that far north.
Yeah.
On my last journey there, I made it up to as far north as Oban.
Uh,
Right.
yeah.
Didn't get much past that, but I've had some fabulous times there. As a matter of fact, some of the if you actually had the hardcover of Hammered, the back and the interior of that album is all Scotland,
Oh, okay, cool.
which was
Awesome.
part of the journey of that making that record. But
Yeah.
longer story. Longer story. We went back to we were talking about Woolly, but so you're a Scottish brethren, mate. You're a Northern European. Not that that means anything, but there's something to be said for where your DNA is stamped
Yeah.
and how that harmonizes with as it trickles down. From my understanding, and or at least my perception, is that there's something about wherever you're coming from, when you make the connection with somebody who's from that same realm,
Yeah.
there's just a little inner tuning fork that goes like, it's like there's something about them.
That's cool.
So it's like we're brothers now, man. I mean, I'm brothers with everybody, but
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's really interesting to me, and to have that experience with people in general, because I love to travel. I love to meet new people and new experiences all the time, right? So
So how did your
absolutely.
folks, influence your
So how it
music?
came back. So my dad was traveling a bunch when when my sister and I were kids. I have an older sister, 5 years older than me. And she was a big music fan when, I mean, I was like 4, she was 8, and she
Yeah.
was really into cool music. So all the cool music that was being produced in the, late 60s, early 70s was a pretty sweet era for
Right.
songwriters slash bands and creative music that was, coming
Yeah.
out of the radio, right? So my old man he was working in London at the time, and he'd be over there for 3 months and then come back and
Uh,
have suitcases full of stuff. And what he always brought my sister were albums.
oh
So he'd
man.
go to the record stores, get the latest top of the pops of what was going on in England,
Yeah.
and that was Cat Stevens and Traffic
Yeah.
and Cream and I mean everything
Awesome.
that we all listened to as we came up, right?
Yeah.
Listening to that stuff. These were like first presses, right? And my sister was like listening to those all the time, and
That's
I was
awesome.
totally down with listening to those things. I at 6, I remember like literally lifting records out of their sleeves, knowing the right way to hold them, and
Right.
get them on the stereo, and I'd go into a trance, and And so ever since my very formative experience with hearing music was through that pathway. And then there was great radio. Now I grew up in North Ontario, Canada.
Oh, okay.
So because my parents immigrated to Canada, and then my parents had me and my sister and I, and then my parents kind of did. They were creative people and had their own plans of how, they wrote their own book
Right.
on how relationships go and all that kind of stuff. So I ended up spending my first 12 years in Northern Ontario, which is in the boonies, in the woods, in areas that were all named after towns in Scotland. True. They call it the Haliburton Highlands, is what they called it.
Oh, crazy.
And it actually parallels with Scotland, if true the line.
Oh, like geographically.
Geographically, yeah. So
Cool.
it was very familiar to my mom, who wanted, to, I don't know, to get a break from my crazy old man, I guess.
Yeah.
Or, to be on her own, but whatever, however that works. But so me and the sister and my mom, we're constantly listening to, cool records. And there was a great radio station that we would be able to dial in from Toronto. And I think it was called CFTR, if I recall. But it was only AM radio that we could get. And the top of the pops of CFTR radio in Toronto was fabulous songwriting, and there's still cool pop songs, and but you're listening to Burt Bacharach or the that was like top 40, or you were listening to the Carpenters or the Rolling Stones and the Beatles, of course, right? But all these other ones that I never knew, but like all this sense of melody and stuff, and it just really spoke to me. So big music fan from a very small age. Like my kids now are the same way. They're sponges for listening to different things, and they have an open mind about listening to all kinds of different music. They listen to stuff that I don't listen to,
right?
But I'm not going to rob them of whatever it does for them. It doesn't work for me,
right?
I call it like what do I call it? I'm such a dick. I call it like polka for the. I call it polka for the hearing impaired. When they're like listening to
yeah.
So I always make jokes about that. I mean, hey man, to each his own, but
that's right.
doesn't really give me some melody, please,
please.
So guitar playing, I begged my parents for a guitar from like the age of 8 till 11. Can I get a guitar? No, you're not. You're going to play with it, and then you toss it to the corner, and we're not making that kind of investment.
Right.
I was like, and then they finally made a deal with me when I was like 11. They said, if you take up a brass instrument, because my dad was a trumpet player in the Boys Brigade in Scotland. He said, if you play trumpet for a year and could get through like a whole piece and play with the school band, we'll get you a guitar.
Oh, nice.
And I said, okay, Louis Armstrong, here I come. Right? Because I want to play. I was like, okay, I'll play trumpet. Let's play trumpet. So I played trumpet, and then I sucked and I was terrible. And the only reason I got it was so I could get a guitar. Right. And there was but this is actually the beginning of my recording career, because I didn't go practice. You got to go practice your instrument. So I would go up in my room like on Monday. I'd have class, whatever, in my band class, and I come home and I'd record myself in doing the shit that would drive my parents crazy, and I knew it would drive them crazy, right? And then I put it on a loop.
Oh, really?
And took off, and just to drive them nuts. And I think that's why I was doing it, but I didn't want to practice. But at the same token is, this was the same way. I think it was an afterthought that I realized, like, if I keep playing this bad stuff, they're gonna like hate it, and they'll hand me a guitar in like 5 minutes.
Yeah, It's like, done. No, we can't do it anymore.
Yeah, yeah. And then, like, funnily enough, like a few years after that, I saw a Highland appliance commercial where the kid did exactly what I did. And I always wanted royalty for that. I thought
Yeah,
somebody would
I was
watch it.
doing
If
that.
somebody told the story. Well, like I did. I got picked off eventually. Getting into the room, and they were like, "You're not playing. This is the recording." I was like, well, "No, just listen to myself. I gotta
Yeah,
listen to
yeah.
myself. Got to make it better, right?"
Oh man, that's crazy.
True. So a year went by. We did our like band concert. I think it was like seventh or eighth grade, and I got my first guitar. My
Nice.
dad like succumbed, and he was working in New York at the time and brought me home a Fender Lead One, which I still have it.
Oh, you do really?
Oh yeah, it's like my grail.
Oh man.
It was because that thing I played for the next 10 years. It was my thing. It was
Oh
my
wow. Wow.
so and then during that period I started discovering, oh wow, these are instruments, they like sing and resonate, and they all have their own little stories inside, and they relate to some people, they don't to others.
Yep.
It's kind of interesting. And you're a guitar player, you know what I'm talking about. You'll pick up an instrument and you'll like all of a sudden you'll just go like, like,
Oh yeah.
oh, and you're like, holy shit. It's like, and then all of a sudden there's like songs locked in these things,
Yeah.
and they tell you where to go, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden that realization happened, so I started collecting guitars. And then by that time I knew in my first couple of bands, and I'd take whatever money that we would make on the gig and throw it in a kitty and,
Right.
buy guitars. And luckily, I started buying the right guitars. And it was only because they spoke to me. I didn't buy them because of investment. I didn't,
Yeah.
it was always a connection to them. And I always wanted to see what song it was going to teach me,
Yeah.
because that's how this whole songwriting thing came
That's
apart,
awesome.
but or came to be. But yeah, so once that happened and they put that first guitar in my hand, it was a Fender Lead One was the very first one, and it was a limited run. They thought they were going to make a cooler Strat and whatever. There's a bunch of them, but
Yeah.
I should say that they thought it was going to be a big seller, and it just wasn't.
No, wasn't.
So now they stopped production of that, and now it's actually become rare. Now, not that I was all about that, and I still love the guitar, and I still use it. But I don't take it out of the house just in case,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're all gonna go to the kids anyway. It doesn't matter, or at least pay for college.
Right. That's awesome.
Which is really
Have
one of
you
the things.
sold any of your guitars? Like through time?
There was a time I was in what do we call Americana now, I think, but I called it folk rock. So like
Yeah.
I was in a band called Ashcan Van Gogh in the 80s and early 90s. And that band actually gleaned some success, in the sense of working musicians. Like
Right.
we were supporting ourselves to some degree, to definitely a workable degree. We actually made more money selling merchandise, and we learned that from Billy Brandt. Do you know who Billy
Yep.
is?
Yep.
Local dude. And Billy was in Ashcan, and Mary McGuire. And during that period of time, it really started, we figured out how to, at least we thought we had it figured out, of how to, it was a business, and it was, a job.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it still is. I mean, that is the key really for bands. I mean, because
Yeah.
you can't make any money,
No,
on anything else.
especially now, and that's a whole kind of really a sad point I think in our world. It's wonderful because now you can create your own, and you have your own platform, and you can be your own
Yeah.
record company. You can do all that, but it's really hard to eat
Yeah.
when you're trying to do that. And the majority of people that are radio used to be a great thing. It would turn us on to really fabulous music.
Yeah.
And now, again, this is why I'm a woolly mammoth.
I don't know.
right? Because it's like, oh well, I remember when,
Yeah. Yeah.
but in this the forest, in the sense of it being a creative endeavor, I think that's all kind of succumb to corporate um planning, in the sense of where they it's not about art, it's not about music, it's about money, right?
Yeah.
So how can I get 20 million young teenage people to buy into this? And it's got nothing, zero, to do with art.
Yeah.
It's a beat, it's a sound, it's a
Yeah.
uh, oh there
Don't but don't you think don't you think that's always been there? I mean,
to some degree, except I think uh, yes, they always wanted to make music, and they always wanted to make money. Excuse
yeah.
me, money from music. I totally, yes, always believe that. Except they actually invested in an artist at
Yeah.
one time,
Right.
in my opinion. And and
Yes.
and I don't want to sit here and say that there's no such thing as, because there are,
Yeah.
but it's become so homogenized, and it's like the theory of the time now is, well, we don't want to deal with that guy, he's a problem, you know why can't I just feed in a bunch of words
Yeah.
and and tell the computer to make uh, uh, a controllable entity,
Yeah.
and I will sell it to everyone, and everybody will think it's great. And they're stamping humanity out of corporations. Sorry, corporations,
Yeah.
but you're stamping the humanity out of humanity.
Yeah.
And uh, at the end of the day, it ain't about that for human beings. We're more organic than that. We need connection, and we need spirituality. We need um, to feel like we belong in this weird little world that we live in.
That's right.
We're getting so far and disconnect, in my opinion, and
Hmm.
disconnected from all of that stuff, that um that used to really fill my soul when I was a little kid, and listening to like the Beatles or Cat Stevens, like that actually moved me as a child, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And there was, because it was authentic, it was coming from a real place, as opposed to um I, there's no, I don't hear a Cat Stevens this day and age, because I don't discover them, because I'm old. I don't have I'm sure there is one, but as far as what corporations have decided that is what we should be hearing,
Yeah.
and that sounds so pathetic to say that, oh, it's a corporation. No, it's just the people who are running the show. The bean counters are not art lovers.
Yeah. It's kind of that mass marketing
It's like,
of the
well,
art.
we've got peanut butter, so let's make 5 million jars of it and give it to
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah. And if it's as bland as possible, then it's going to go to over to as many people as possible because it won't be there's not that variety.
Right.
But I think that's the
Sure.
great thing about, um, like there's good and there's bad things. And I think the good thing is that we have, if you can tap into them, you know, local musicians, they're doing great things. And, sure, it's not like mega stadium or whatever, but it's really true art.
It really is. And though I love showbiz, and don't get me wrong about any of that stuff,
Yeah.
and God bless everybody who's doing their thing and getting the billions. That's cool. That's
Yeah.
great. I'm happy for you. But there's parts of it which are, you're losing the soul of what's going on. Somebody, an ex DJ, had posted a thing the other day saying that AI was now going to take over the whole world of DJs, and not in the sense of like an idea, like they're
Yeah.
actually doing it.
Doing it. Yeah.
And it's like, wait a minute, it's like painting with like uh invisible colors.
Yeah.
It's like, what are we doing here? It's
Right.
about people. This isn't about like, how do I knock the DJ who wants to play his own thing on
Yeah.
his show. That's that.
Yeah.
Oops, sorry. That's that's not right.
Yeah.
There's something not right about
But I do think it'll bleed out. Like so, and what I mean by that is that there will always be paths for, um, the folks that aren't going to fit into that lane, right? They're gonna kind of bleed off the edge, and there'll be people like us that are gonna go, oh, there it is, right? You know, so you get this mega highway of all this other, well, you know, in the future AI generated crap that you may or may not enjoy, and then there's going to be the authentic stuff, and it's still good. I just feel like it's such an innate part of our beings. There's
it
going to
is.
be
Unfortunately, though, the general public is very lazy. Me probably being right at the front of that line.
Right, right.
And unless I get turned on to it by
Yep.
someone that I'm working through,
Yeah.
discovery of that is harder.
Yeah.
Now, when you're an artist or a musician or whatever you are, trying to get some kind of notice, the avenues become very narrow in the sense of how you are going to expose yourself, for lack of better terms, to a wider audience. When the freeway
Right.
of of whatever that is completely overwhelming you because you're busy doing this and the three jobs that you're trying to do just to like
Yeah. Yeah.
do what you need to do. I it's a interesting time. I really hope, and it's going to be up to us to fix it or to at least continue like you are, like you're doing now, even though it's you and me.
Yeah.
We're having a conversation. Maybe
Right.
somebody will hear that conversation one day and go, I relate to that. This is yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm aware of it. I'm aware of it. And maybe I should start looking for something local or something more authentic as opposed to what I'm being delivered by Spotify. And it's
Yeah.
just easy for me to just go playlist, let somebody else control it. And
Yeah.
that's where the trouble starts coming, you
Right.
know.
Right. Yeah. Because it's really easy to get in the car and turn on Spotify or turn on Pandora and let it, like, you tell it, I'd like to listen to the Black Crows. So it's gonna spit out a bunch of stuff that sounds sort of like the Black Crows, and
Right. And well, you
it's
said Black.
great. But
So I'm gonna listen to that.
yeah,
I'm gonna
well,
listen
you
to
would
your
fit into
I'm
there. You
going
would
in
be in
your
there.
car.
But yeah, well, you know what, something, you know, you can definitely fall into that path, and then you never get to discover anything really. And I know, you know, you may be the same as me. I know that I feel like I'm a little bit different from most of my friends in that they're they're very much, you know, what we listened to in high school. That's cool, and that's as far as they went. And I love them, and I love that music still.
Sure.
But you know, I'm always like, what else do we have out there? Something that sounded like, you know, I love Judas Priest. So there's this other band coming out now, and they're doing. It's not Judas Priest, but it's something different, you know.
You
And
know, I can totally get with that. There's a band I discovered for myself. And actually it was through because I was doing a video project, and then all of a sudden I was looking for something that was shot a certain way, and all of a sudden I discovered this band from LA called Starcrawler.
Starcrawler, all right.
Are you hip to
No,
Starcrawler?
I got it. Well, I'm gonna go check it out.
Kids, I mean kids, and they are rocking like I want to be in their band, but they won't let some old woolly man geezer,
The woolly mammoth won't can't
the
get in.
woolly man geezer to I am so enlightened by the future of rock and roll because there are kids out there who
Yeah,
know how to
yeah,
do it,
yeah.
and they don't know nothing except for the records that they listen to, and but they're creating it and it's coming right through them. Henry Cash is the guitar player in the band.
Okay,
He's like what, 21 now, maybe 22.
nice.
Arrow DeWild is the singer, and she's this like really freakishly beautiful talent
Uh,
that just totally rocks my world. They're super cool. They were just in Detroit opening
oh,
for
so
uh
it's Starcrawler, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Check this band out.
Making
It
a
is,
note.
I don't want to say the saviors of rock and roll, but definitely one of the saviors,
All right, cool.
in my opinion. And I'm so jazzed by the vibe because it's obviously familiar and it's stuff that I'm familiar with in the sound, but they're taking it to another place
That's
because
cool.
they're influenced, but they're doing their own thing, man. And
That's
it's
awesome.
like, yay,
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah,
Awesome.
very, very cool. I didn't mean to take you off a track from your original thing. We didn't
No,
even
it's all good.
thing,
This is
but the
perfect.
conversation has been fabulous. I loved
That's
it.
that's perfect. So I did want to kind of circle back though on the woolly mammoth. So the Deception's out.
Correct.
When's the rest of that coming out?
See, and that's part of this story too, is for what I've noticed is that though the Disciples have been playing this new material that we started recording back in 22. Yeah,
Okay.
maybe it might have been late 21, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, we'd recorded the stuff, and then between my life and my real life and day gigs and being a video producer and making movies and all that stuff, um, finishing this album has been challenging.
Yeah.
Never mind the fact that it's more expensive now that I'm not engineering it.
Right.
Right. Like I used to be able to just go over to
Yeah.
the
Do
Hudson
it.
House,
Right.
record when I wanted to. Got to be a little more frugal when it
Mhm.
comes to that particular process. But I'm Scottish, so that's comes completely natural to me. So um, it's been a while, and it's been difficult to finish the process. And I wanted to, obviously finish the whole record and then release it. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, that's just like not the way to get interest going. Just I
Yeah.
have no expectation of anything, but I mean, it'd be great to score a soundtrack deal, but
Right.
that's going to be, and it's Wooly is perfect for that kind of realm. We all say that. So, this would be really cool in a
Yeah.
movie. And that's hence the rest of the title, which is Other Assorted Sweets, is during the discovery process of making the record and recording the basic tracks and following the journey kind of wherever it went.
Hmm.
They really took through the course of recording some of these songs when we recorded them, they were like 12 minutes long, and I knew that I was going to trim them down,
Yeah.
but they were different portions. They were different journeys in with the song. And so like for 35 or 38, 40 bars, the song went completely somewhere else. And then we veered it back to where it was. And it was like, oh, that's like a suite. Those are suites. That's what they
Yeah.
call that in, real music terms.
Right.
And I was like, oh, of course. Of course. So that's the whole.
That's how I came in there. Nice.
So now I identify with the woolly mammoth. I'm hairy like a woolly mammoth. I'm almost extinct like a woolly mammoth. And the other assorted sweets are all that journey, except we spell it SWEETS rather than SUI, right?
Nice.
So just based on the journey, they're going, and it's all about the journey, right?
Awesome. Awesome. Well,
So that's the whole story on that. So that I've got 3 or 2 mixed in the can, and one we released a few weeks back.
Yep.
The second one's ready to go, but I wanted to just see if there was even any kind of interest in where it was going, because this record isn't a concept record like the other one was. This is just it's a collection of songs, and funnily enough, it actually is it's got a theme to it, in the sense I didn't realize that until
after.
After, and everything's recorded. I just have to mix the stuff now. So the next one hopefully will release maybe in the next couple of weeks. I'm headed back into the studio actually on Monday to start another 2 songs to mix those. We've narrowed it down to 14.
Nice.
Because we did another 4 songs at Plymouth right from scratch. And I'm just gonna
dole them out.
I'm just gonna dole them out. When it's finished, there will be I will make a very limited run of USB high resolution files of a USB, but it's in a candy wrapper.
All right. Awesome.
That's
That'll be
coming. And then not only that, but then we can include all the other data that's part of that record. There's a lot of pictures. There's a lot of, and arty stuff, not just
yeah.
like Joe Schmo's camera phone.
Yeah.
But you can do wonderful things on those as well. But
Oh yeah. Yeah, you can.
there's we I thought this time to actually record, like throw up video cameras and record certain things. So
Oh,
there
nice.
will
So you get
be,
kind of the backstory of how it
yeah,
was
yeah, a
made.
little bit. And I'm actually going to cut that in, being a filmmaker too. I'm going to take all that and, not necessarily make a video, but at least
Yeah,
have a
but it'll
little
be yeah.
and then lyric and the artwork, which is all very important to me. And I feel like that just doesn't exist anymore. Like, look at all the art,
I
wonderful
know.
art you have right behind you, right?
I love artwork.
Right. And to come, that's all part of that experience and
Yeah.
journey. Being so, like, you're looking at a cell phone with a, thumbnail this size. It's like,
Yeah.
where's
The
that art? And where are those artists? What
right.
are those, what are they doing? And it's,
Yeah, they're out there. I mean,
oh, of
they're
course they are.
definitely out there. And
What's
I
the
yeah.
woman who designed the cover that I went looking for? It was a Google search. I want to look up woolly mammoths,
Yeah.
woolly mammoth art interpretations, and I started going through it. And on like page like 12, I found the cover for our record, and it's this collage artist that works out of Poland. I've reached out to her 9 different ways. She's ignored me. So I'm like, fuck it, I'm using it. It's not like you can tell me I didn't have rights. I'll give you all the licensing, whatever you want.
Yeah.
Tell
Yeah.
me don't use it, don't use it. Fine. But just communicate with me.
Right.
I even did it in Polish. I went on Google Translate and did it in Polish.
Anything. Come on.
Anything, just let me know, because it totally speaks to that album cover, totally speaks to everything that we were trying to do on this record. And
Yeah.
to actually come across it, I'm like, there's no way she can get this pissed at me, or give me a cease and desist, whatever.
That's right. Right.
It
Exactly.
doesn't matter. There's no hard copy of it anyway. Just
Yeah.
delete.
And I'm done.
And I'll draw my own.
There you go.
Did you see the
Oh
cover?
yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
it looks cool. Yeah,
Good.
definitely.
It's fun.
Very
It's
cool.
fabulous art and says everything to me.
Yeah.
Like that whole experience when I came across that, and the DNA strand and
Yeah.
the big woolly, and the guys like messing with it. I mean, I was like, this is it. Thank God for the internet. I would have never found her, right? I still haven't found her, but
Right.
the art.
Yeah, maybe she'll listen to this and go, "Oh yeah, that's him."
Could be. And well, I sent her hammered, and I sent a really nice letter, and
Yeah.
I did literally 3 different social sites, 3 different email accounts, and she must be like a pretty big cheese in some, because she gets her work published
Yeah.
by some pretty big magazines. But I mean, come on, you ain't that big a cheese.
Right. Just let me know.
So
Yes or
just
no. Come on. That's it.
screw yourself. How about
Yeah.
that? Just like
Right. Exactly. That's all you gotta do. Just so you know, you got this. Whatever.
It's okay. So I figure I'll take no comment as
Yeah. Freedom.
if I sell 1 billion copies, which will never happen.
Right.
I'll probably hear from her attorney, and
Yeah,
then she can have the point zero zero
0.01 cent. Yeah.
03.
Exactly.
The 1/1,000,000th of 1 penny. She
Yeah.
can have that. I'll give it.
Uh, awesome. Well, JC,
Yeah.
thanks so much for being on Fans with Bands.
Oh, thanks for
really
letting me
appreciate it.
Thanks
Oh,
for letting me
this is
talk about
fantastic.
myself.
I love it.
I feel like the biggest narcissist in the world right
Oh
now.
no, I love it because these stories are great. It's fantastic.
And it's
Um,
absolute pleasure to make a connection with you, Chuck. And I hope to get with you in person.
Yeah, in person. Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, for sure.
So I've just got one last question for you, and
Please.
you probably already know what it is, and that is pineapple or no pineapple on pizza.
I'm gonna have to go with a hard no on that. So the Canadians, who I discovered liked that shit. I was like, what is wrong with you? What is wrong with you?
Right.
I was that there's something really wrong about that. Now, that being said, keeping an open mind,
Right.
some people are really into like the savory and sweet
Yep. That's
being
what
in
it.
the same bite.
Yeah.
And I'm a just old school woolly mammoth meat and potatoes guy, and I
Yeah.
like my
Me too. I like to keep them separate. I like the sweets with the sweets,
now.
savor,
There's
savory.
sometimes with like certain Asian cuisines and stuff that all of a sudden I'm starting to develop a finer taste
Ah,
for the mixtures.
yeah.
At the end of the day, and I'm told that as we get older, our tastes tend to really get narrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And instead of like eating a steak, like, I mean, I'm a meat eater, clearly. Um, uh, they like it more well done, as like because it makes it more
Oh,
charred.
really?
And like they're
Oh.
and just word,
I
not
haven't
me.
gotten there yet. I
Yeah,
haven't.
no, me neither. Why would you bother?
Yeah.
Just get a shoe.
Right. Exactly.
Just chew on a
Yeah.
shoe.
Yeah. So now you've ruined this piece of meat here. It was totally fine when it was almost bloody. Or it was
Yes,
totally bloody. It's
yes,
just
yes,
fine. Heat it up a
yes.
little bit. It's good.
It's all good. So well, you and me will go for a steak one of these days.
There you go. There you go. Awesome. Well, JC, thanks again for being on Fans of Bands.
Absolute pleasure, my honor, and even better to be able to connect with you. I feel got a little more of a connection going on.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Many thanks to JC for joining me on this episode of Fans of Bands. It was a pleasure to get to know JC and talk more about the music he is making with JC and the Disciples. We also talked about our shared Scottish heritage. How cool is that? Keep up to date with JC and the Disciples by following their website and social media. See the show notes for all the details and links. These are tough times for everyone in the creative industries such as music. Your support of live streaming, purchasing music, and merchandise is critical. If you can help out your local artists, please do. If you are in the Michigan area, consider following the Playing in the Detroit Area Tonight Facebook page. It is a place for fans and bands to support each other and share our combined love of music. Thank you all so much for listening. Be sure to hit subscribe on your favorite podcast service to get each and every episode of Fans with Bands. Spread the word by rating the show and leaving a comment. We want to hear what you think. You can keep in touch by following us on social media. This is a Life in Michigan production. Until next time, be well and kick out the jams.